What's up, YouTube? It is your boy JB, and we are here today with the review for Married at First Sight, Season 14, you guys, Episode 7, and the episode is titled, This Is My Decision Day. Yes, great episode, you guys. So before we go ahead and jump into the review, if you guys are watching this video or any other on the channel and are not subscribed to the channel, I need you guys to do me a big solid favor and stop taking me out on this date and having me pay for it at the end of it. You guys can do me that favor by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, turning your notifications on, sharing the video, and then with that out the way, you guys, without further ado, let's discuss Married at First Sight, shall we? All right, guys, so this episode, we have day 7 through 10 of marriage for our new couples, right? So the couples are leaving their honeymoon and they're heading back to Boston to, now cohabitate with each other to see if this is actually a viable relationship, right? Now, I will say, though, that the apartments are very nice. Like, I love those apartments. And now I'm kind of seeing why homeless-ass Lindsay was, not Lindsay, Alyssa, homeless-ass Alyssa was so on her head about living in those apartments. We're going to talk about Alyssa because I have a lot to say about Alyssa. So we might actually save Alyssa for last, but I got a lot to say about her. So you guys, we're going to first start up with, let's start up with Lindsay and Mark, you guys. Lindsay and Mark are an interesting couple, right? So we see Lindsay and Mark, they get back to Boston, they get into the apartment. Lindsay is like, just toss your clothes into the washing machine. I was like, how about we just burn his clothes and go buy him some new clothes? I mean, the bed bugs thing, it just makes me cringe. It just makes me itch when you just think about the bed bugs, right? So then she talks about, we're going to have to get you a water bottle tomorrow, to start your sustainability. I was like, she's one of those. Ugh. Okay. Now, I will say one thing about, Lindsay and his sustainability. Couldn't handle it, but one thing, they got into bed and Lindsay was talking about you're loud, which he really was. I'm like, damn, you are at a 10. Can you bring it down to at least a 5? Hell, I even asked you for a 6, but you are very loud, right? So then we see those two, they went to Mark's apartment, right? Those hazmat suits they had on, I was like, but I guess his landlord must have fumigated the house to get rid of the bed bugs. So I was like, okay, it makes sense. But then they were going into that apartment and she's like, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want that? Is this sentimental to you? Is this sentimental to you? Does that mean anything to you? Like, she was just going through, just basically ready to just throw everything away, and I don't blame her. Like, no. Anything in this apartment that has been around the bed bugs, it can stay. It can stay. The bed bugs can live on it. They can mix and mingle. They can go to the club. They can do whatever they want to do. But what they ain't going to do is come to this apartment with me and with you. That is not going to happen. We're going to check them at the door. And more specifically, this door. Absolutely not going to happen, right? So then we next see them at Lindsay's place. Lindsay's place, when you look at it, it looks like a hippie threw up in her place. I mean, all those plants and the fact that she's named every single one of those plants, it was just like, oh my God, what the hell is going on here? It just didn't make any sense to me. So then at one point, Lindsay was talking about how, Mark is so hot and cold, right? And we all know the stuff that Mark was dealing with coming back from honeymoon, right? His landlord situation. And Lindsay's whole thing is she's trying to be there for him, but she doesn't feel like he is appreciative of it, right? And I told you guys last week, when you look at Lindsay and Mark, I don't know what the experts were thinking when they matched them together. On paper, they may look good, but I mean, I don't even know if they look good on paper, right? They do look, they do look like a good couple, right? But when you just literally sit down and look at it, it feels as if, we all know Mark has issues with his mother. We all know that, his mother. And it just feels like this is a mothering, she's the maternal type, and she's also kind of smothering just a little bit, right? And you guys can let me know what you think, but that's just the vibe that I get, right? So Lindsay also feels like she gets two versions of Mark, right? She doesn't feel that, he's giving her the best of him, which is very frustrating to her. And, she also says that, they went from having sex on their honeymoon to, at this point, when she tried, touching him, he ain't feeling it, right? And this is when they're talking to Pastor Cal. He ain't feeling it, right? So Mark admits that he is scared to talk to her. And basically, Mark says, yeah, we had sex the first night, and then after that we had sex again. But Mark's whole thing now is he wants to go slow. I'm like, ooh, you want to go slow? He wants to go slow. He wants to be able to get to know Lindsay, right? Yeah, really should have thought about that before you had sex with her, right? You really should have thought about that, right? So then she feels like, what he's saying to her is kind of bullshit, basically, about him not feeling comfortable talking to her. But Lindsay, let's be real. That one scene, and I can understand why he's not comfortable with talking to you, because that scene before Pastor Cal showed up, when you were upset at him, right? And he was trying to talk to you, you said, just leave me alone. And then you went out on the balcony. Like, that's part of the reason why Mark said what he said. Just letting you know that right now, that's part of the reason. But hey, who am I, right? Who am I? Let's move on, you guys. All right, you guys, next up, let's talk about Olajuwon and Katina, right? So Olajuwon and Katina, they're in their new apartment, right? The thing with Olajuwon is he acts like a Neanderthal, right? Like you would honestly think that this man doesn't know how to cook, this man doesn't know how to do anything for himself, but he's lived by himself, right? But then at one point, I know Katina asked him a question about, cooking. This fool said, he wakes up in the morning, sometimes he'll make him a PB&J sandwich. I'm like, what? So do you expect for your wife, so you want to make yourself a PB&J, but you expect for your wife to just slave over a hot stove and make you a meal? All right, make it make sense, right? So then I was, in my notes I says, does he want a wife or does he want a slave? Because it just seems like he doesn't, I don't think he really wants a wife. I think he just wants basically a glorified servant, someone that'll be there at his every beck and call and whim to cook for him, basically, right? Because, he asked her at one point, when is she going to go shopping? You have working legs and hands and feet. You can get your raggedy ass up and go out there and go shopping as well. It doesn't just have to be me. Shopping is not a woman's thing. Shopping is not just for women. If you want something, you get your ass up, you go to the store, you go get it, and you come back. Especially if you want food. You go to the store, you get what you want. You come back to the house, you prepare it, you cook it. Sorry to spit, you guys. That's how it works, right? So then we see Olajuwon and Katina at one point. They went over to Olajuwon's house, right? And it was in that moment I was like, oh, this is why Olajuwon feels the way he feels. Like his kitchen, right? He had the curtains with the coffee mugs. I was like, this house looks very, very bland. Looks like someone who grew up in the 1950s lives here. It just looks like someone's grandmother lives there. And you know what? Maybe Olajuwon should get with someone that grew up in that time period, where they were taught to cook and clean for the man. Because this is so outdated, antiquated what he wants from Katina, which we're going to talk about that in just a little bit, right? Actually, we're going to talk about that right now. So, Pastor Cal, he came over to their house, right, to their apartment, right, to check on them. So, Pastor Cal is talking to Katina, asking Katina, I know he asked her if she feels like, she's heard. And she says, yes and no, right? He says, don't be afraid to say what it is. But before that, Pastor Cal told Katina and Olajuwon that when we talked to you, cooking was never a deal breaker for you. Like, you might want to get out of that and Pastor Cal said what I've already said, that it looks like he is a Neanderthal. Like, that's really the vibe that it gives, that I'm a Neanderthal. Like, come on now. Like, I can understand it if you were someone who was incapable of getting up every day and cooking for yourself. If that were the case, I would absolutely understand that. But you have working legs, you have working feet and hands, right? Everything on your body works that you need in order to cook. Those parts of your body work. So why do you feel it? Why do you feel that a woman just has to come in and say, "Let me slave over this side stove for my man. Let me cook this. I'm pregnant. We about to have a baby in 5 to 6 months, right?" Stuff like that. Like that's outdated, because that's what it seems like you want her barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen cooking for you, right? That's just the vibe that it gives off. Not, I don't know, that's just the vibe for me, right? So then, back to what I was saying a minute ago when Pastor Kyle was talking about communication with them, right? So Katina feels like, she is heard when it comes to the relationship with Elijah. She just feels that his execution is bad. And Pastor Kyle talked about, them on the horses on their honeymoon, right? Like, I get it. You want to push people, right? You want to push people out of their comfort zone, right? But like I said in last week's review, you have to know when to stop. That is the key. It is okay to want someone to get out of their comfort zone, right? It is okay. But when you see that a person is visibly agitated or upset, and you push their limit too far, that's when you say, okay, you know what, let me back up, right? Because I can see that this is a little bit too much for you right now. So let me back and let me, reconvene and, try to work things out the best way, right? Instead of just keep going. That was what annoyed me with him last week, right? So then Pastor Kyle asked him, had they had sex with each other? Nope, they have not had sex with each other, right? And Pastor Kyle says, well, who is the one that decided no sex? I was thinking it was Katina. Nope, it's Elijah one that decided on that one, right? And, I think what he was trying to say, because I was in and out, but did he say he wanted to get to know her? And I understand that, right? Called complete opposite of Mark and Lindsay. Because Mark and Lindsay, it's interesting, right? If I were to do Married at First Sight, I marry a complete stranger. When I have sex on our honeymoon, actually, no, I really wouldn't. I wouldn't have sex the night of the wedding. I wouldn't have sex during the honeymoon. I'd just be like, you know what, I find you attractive. I don't want you to think anything of that nature, right? If I found a person attractive, I find you attractive, right? But I don't want to, mess things up by getting sexual too soon, right? Because, sex can be a good thing and a bad thing. And, it just depends on the person too, right? Because, some people can get attached easy. Some people can get attached. Some, it's just so many different things that comes with that, right? So me personally, I probably wouldn't do it the first. I probably would wait at least until I feel that we know each other semi good, and then we can go from there. But up front, no. Now, I do like that Pastor Kyle told, I got what Elijah was coming from, but at the same time, Katina feels a way, right? She feels like he's not interested in her, he's not into her, and I got how she felt right that, and that's why I say you have to be. I'm trying to think of it. When it comes to this, you have to understand that verbal speaks, your verbal and your nonverbal, they're very important, right? Because verbally you could be telling her, hey, I don't want to do this right now because of this and this and that, but your nonverbal could speak louder than your verbal is speaking, right? So you have to still be attentive to her, like touch her, let her know, hey, hug her, stuff like that. Just let her know, hey, I am feeling you, but right now it's just not good. I just don't want to jump into that. I don't want to overcomplicate things, right? Because this is already a very interesting situation. Let's not, make it even more complex by having sex right away. So, yeah. So let's move on, you guys. Next up, you guys, let's talk about Noi and Steve, right? In this episode, Noi and Steve, at the beginning part of the episode, they were hella boring. But then when we got towards the end of their scene, it got a little bit interesting with those two. So let's talk about Noi and Steve. Now, let me say this first and foremost, Noi. It is an absolute hell no that the dog is sleeping Sushi. Girl, Sushi would be sleeping in a kennel. Sushi would be sleeping outside. Sushi would be sleeping in his bed, not our bed. Like, oh God. When she was talking about the fact that Sushi likes to sleep in the bed with her, no, absolutely not. I don't want the dog in the bed with us while we sleep at night. That's just not gonna work out for me. Sushi gotta find somewhere else to sleep, right? Sushi, y'all gonna have to do sushi like Jasmine is trying to do with her dog, which we're gonna talk about Jasmine in a little bit. I'm laughing because she lied about that dog situation. I know she lied. But Sushi will be sleeping somewhere else, just not in the bed with us. Like, no, absolutely not. And then for me, I'm a wild sleeper, so Sushi would get, kind of get squished just a little bit, right? So, when Steve went to Alyssa's place, he saw the 3 bed. Now, see, Sushi actually has a bed, but then she said he sleeps on the couch, he sleeps here. I'm like, ugh. So you just let Sushi sleep wherever the hell he wants, basically, right? Girl, no. Absolutely not. So then they are talking about the fact that, they were talking about walking Sushi and, Sushi using the bathroom. And Steve has an issue with picking up dog poop. And I'm right there with you, Steve. Ugh. That's why I don't have a dog. I love dogs, but I don't want a dog because I just can't. Ugh. Like in my old apartment complex, that was the number one. That was my biggest complaint in my apartment complex. That would just, and it really, I'm not being funny, but these people right here, they would just walk their dogs all day and night, and when a dog shits, just leave it on the sidewalk. I'm like, that is nasty. Now there are some of them who would pick up they would have their bags with them to pick it up, but more times than not, people would just leave it sitting in the grass, on the sidewalk, in the hallway. Actually, let me tell you guys a small story time, right? About the time somebody let their dog literally shit by my door. And I knew exactly who it was because she walked her dog every day, and she walked her dog in front of my apartment I saw the woman every day. And I knew what apartment she lived in. I knew her apartment, and I knew all that stuff, right? So one night I was getting ready to go somewhere, and I walked to my front door, right? Open my door, I'm like, oh my God, what is that smell? And it was nighttime, right? It was nighttime. So if I happened to look down, it was like around 8 or 9, right? I happened to look down, I'm like, oh, who did this? And then I thought about it, I'm like, it was her. So what I did was, since you didn't want to pick up after your dog, I went in and that is so nasty. I went and got me a Walmart plastic bag, right? Scooped it up, and I walked it to her apartment and dropped it on her front doorstep. There you go. Now you deal with it. Like, I just dumped it right in front of her door. Dumped it. She never did it again. She never came back. She won't walk that way, but she would never let her dog use the bathroom by my door. Like, she learned her lesson that day, right? So then we see Steve. Now Steve, his apartment is just basically a typical bachelor pad, right? Now those LED lights, right? He has LED lights throughout the apartment except for in his kitchen, right? I think that's what he said. I just don't get the fascination with the LED lights. They're cool and all right, but I don't understand the fascination with them. Hey, Noi, however, is not feeling those LED lights. She doesn't want them in their apartment, but Steve, he wants them in their apartment, right? So then we see them as they're talking to Pastor Cal, right? So Noi and Steve, after the wedding day, they were, they hit the ground running, basically, right? So they've had discussions about kids, They've had discussions about finances, right? And let's talk about the kids first, right? So Noi, she wants 3 children, right? Steve is okay with 2. And because he feels as if, what if we have a special needs kid, right? And, special needs kids, that's like taking care of 3 kids in one, right? So would you want to add more to that, right? And Noi said that is non-negotiable for her. I'm like, really? And I'm like, you're not thinking realistically, right? Let's say you can't have kids, number one. Let's say you can't have kids. Let's say something happens to your body, right? Let's say you have your first child, your second child, right? And then let's say, what if your doctor comes to you and say, if you have another one, that could potentially, unlive you. Like, there's so many factors, right? There are just so many different factors that she's not factoring in, and I'm just like I was confused with Noi. Like, you're not thinking about you're not thinking things through. So it just was like, what it was. She said that she won't budge on that, and I'm like, but you don't know what the future holds. Like, you might not be able to might not be able to have 3 kids, right? It's a possibility you can have them, but it's also a possibility that you can't, and that's what Pastor Cal told her. Think about the possibilities, because we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what can happen tomorrow. So, like you said, you might not be able to have kids. You might have a special needs kid. You might have 2 kids, and you want to have a 3rd one. And like I said, your doctor tells you that's not viable, right? So we got to be a little bit realistic. So then they talk about finance. They talked about finances with each other, right? And Noi's whole thing is she doesn't want to have to worry about finances because of how her upbringing, right? And Steve is talking about the fact that he does have ways of bringing in money, and he says that he is looking to get back into his career. How are you looking to get back into your career? You need to be actively doing stuff for your career. But hey, I don't understand it, you guys. But Steve and Noi are going to figure it out. Jasmine and Michael, right? Jasmine and Michael. So with this one, I don't know who the bad guy is, because wow. So we see Jasmine and Michael, right? So they're back in Boston, and they're at the apartment. So Jasmine asks Michael, "So are you staying here tonight?" He says yes. And he says, "Are you?" She says no, because she has to go home and she has to work on schooling for her dog, right? I was like, oh my God. So Jasmina, we know that Jasmina has a roommate that is a male, right? So they were talking about, how it's going to be living together, right? And she asked him, so have you ever lived with anyone of the opposite sex before? I'm going to repeat that one more time. Have you lived with someone of the opposite sex before? So that means, have you ever lived with a said woman? Michael says, no, never. This will be his first time doing it. Keep that in the back of your brain for just a minute, you guys. So, Michael, he's not okay with the fact that Jasmina is not going to be staying with him at the apartment. So then we find out Jasmina said she didn't want to stay with Michael so that she could basically reset and come back to him with a clear head. Girl, we knew that from the jump, right? So we're at his apartment. His apartment was basic. The thing that threw me with his apartment was the fact that if you looked at his windows, he had it's like the typical college kids, when they don't have any like curtains. I know I don't have any curtains in here, but shut up, mind your business. They put the sheets over it. I was like, oh, okay. Then he had that picture of the woman. She said, is that someone you know? He says no. One of his friends gifted him that for his birthday, right? So she then finds out she knows he has 2 roommates, right? But they were in an apartment, and one of his roommates left. And she's like, that's a woman. He was like, yeah. She was like, you didn't tell me that your roommates was a woman. He said, I never had the opportunity. It never came up. I was like, it never came up, but she asked you the night before at the new apartment, have you ever lived with a woman? And you said, no, never. This will be your first time. But that's a whole woman right there that just walked out the door. So you lied. You lied about that, right? Then when they were at, I believe they were at her apartment, right? And she brings it up again. She was like, so, you didn't tell me that you didn't tell me you had a roommate that was a woman, but you also failed to tell me that both of your roommates were women. He said, did I? It just never, once again, it just never came up. But once again, she asked you verbatim, have you ever lived with a woman? You said, no, never. This is the first time. Michael, you got a problem with lying, buddy, don't you? So then Pastor Cal, he stops by to talk to them, right? So Jasmine says that, he's different off camera and on camera, right? Because she says that, at one point he talked to her in a certain way, and then off camera he was very aggressive, he was loud, and he had a tone, right? And the tone was very disrespectful. And then she talks about the things that his family told him, right? And Michael feels like, the things that I've told you and the things that my family told you, they're backfiring, and they're backfiring on him. So I was like, oh my God, if you kind of listen to it, it kind of sounds like Alyssa and Chris just a little bit, because remember, that is Alyssa's thing. That was Alyssa's thing. She was going off but see, the difference is, we'll talk about Alyssa in a minute. The difference between Alyssa and Chris and Jasmine and Michael is Jasmine is saying that, his family and friends told him these things, and now she's seeing it, right? So that's her issue, not the issue with Alyssa. Like I said, we'll talk about Alyssa. So, Pastor Kyle is talking to them, and, she's, Jasmine is saying that, when she talks to him, it feels like she is his subordinate, like he's talking down to her, right? So Pastor Kyle said to her, whenever he gets to that point where he's talking down to you, you tell him I'm not your enemy. I was like, huh? What? I'm not your enemy? I mean, I guess. See, me personally, but see, I'm a little bit confrontational, because I'd be like, Michael, I'm not a child. I'm not your child, so don't talk to me in that tone, in that manner. But, maybe that would start something. Who knows, right? But you guys, let's move on and let's talk about the best part of this episode, right? All right, you guys, let's wrap up the episode with Alyssa and Chris, right? So Chris has moved into the apartment, but that evil ass wife of his has not, right? And Chris doesn't even have her phone number. I was like, oh, he doesn't have her phone number. Chris, count that as a blessing that you don't have that devil in disguise's phone number, right? So let's talk about Alyssa's shallow ass, right? So Alyssa is out with her mother, right? And I thought her mother was about to agree with her, because they were talking about Chris, and Alyssa was talking about when she walked down the aisle that he wasn't what she was expecting. And her mom was like, yeah. I was like, oh, so you about to agree with your daughter? But she says, no, I'm not about to agree with my daughter. She says that she likes him, right? She thinks he's nice and he's cute. And then Alyssa, here we go with Alyssa bad mouthing Chris. He's argumentative. He's this, he's that. The man has tried to have conversations with you, and at every turn and every point, you whoosh, whoosh, you duck and dodge him like I don't know, like what the hell? And you want to just badmouth this man, which really bothers me with her, right? So then we see Chris. Chris is with his friend, and he's talking about this nutcase that is Alyssa, right? Saying that, Alyssa told him that they weren't a match because her psychic told him that, she's the person that she's going to be with is going to have a tattoo of is it an eagle? Some kind of a bird. I was like, are you fucking joking? A damn bird? Girl, you sound like that nutcase off of Love During Lockup, Indy. Y'all are literally putting everything into what a psychic says. Now, I'm not knocking psychics. If you guys believe in all that stuff, I'm not knocking that, right? But why put all your stock into what a psychic tells you, right? Why? That makes absolutely no sense to me. Just literally makes no sense that you're going to put all of your stock into a psychic. Why? Why? Explain that to me while we're listening to what a psychic says. I'm just asking a random question, right? So then we found out a little bit more about Alyssa, and this was when I was like, oh yeah, she's definitely gotta go. So Alyssa is talking to her mother, and she's telling her mother that, I was on his social media and he posted in his stories to defund the police, and you know how I feel about the police. I was like, ooh, there you go. There you go. I knew it was something else about you I did not like. You're a Trump supporter. So she has an issue with the defund the police, right? She's like, you talk about defunding the police, but then what's gonna happen when you meet the police and you call them and they don't want to come because you want them to be defunded? Alyssa, you dumb bitch. Let me explain something to you what defund the police means. Let me educate you on what that saying meant. Defund the police did not mean to abolish the police. Defund the police meant to take money away from the police. Not that, they get so much money, right? The police gets so much money a year, and they go out to these calls. Sometimes they're not qualified for them, especially if a person is having a mental health episode, right? You might have a trigger happy ass cop going out to someone who's having a mental health episode, and they pull a gun on them because they're quote afraid of them, right? But it's someone who has a mental illness, right? What people mean when they say to defund the police, take a little bit of the money from the police departments and reallocate those funds to someone like a psychiatrist, a therapist, someone, so that way when they need a situation where they get a call where someone is having a mental health episode, they can send out someone that can actually help that person, instead of the police arresting that person, putting that person in a cell, and that person still having a longer mental health episode. That's what they mean by defunding. You see, you Trump supporters love to believe that defund the police is to abolish the police department. No one has ever said to abolish the police department. People just want to say, let's just take a little bit of money from here and put it here. But you knew that, but you know that. You just want to just play games, right? And here's here's the thing that I want to say going forward. If Katina and Jasmine are still her girls after watching that episode, I ain't got nothing for Jasmine and Katina, because you two are married to black men. Now, we don't know how decision day is going to go, but you two are married to black men, and she's talking about, she doesn't want the police department defunded. That lets you know who your friend is. She's talking about, and I was like, girl, fuck the police, bitch. I don't like calling women bitches, but that one deserves it. So you guys forgive me for that, but she deserves that one. So then we see as Pastor Cal goes to the apartment to talk to Alyssa and Chris, right? So the devil shows up, and Chris tells what his experience was, that she had no interest in him. And this has been since the wedding night, right? And she says, I could have walked away, but I didn't, because physically he wasn't my type. See, those are the things that's annoying me that she says. She's a good person, which we got that. I was like, oh, she didn't say I'm a good person, but she said it at the end, right? And that she could have left, but she didn't. You could have left, right? But the reason that you didn't is because you want to be on this television show. And then she says, it's not because I want to be on TV. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And we'll talk about that actually, we've been talking about that right now, right? Because Chris brought up the fact that he feels that the reason, he didn't say it verbatim, but you can read the context clues. Chris says the reason that he thinks that she's here is because she wants to be on TV. And Alyssa got mad about that, right? Oh my God, she got upset, started crying. What a Karen. So then this bitch, oh God, sorry you guys, I didn't mean to, she's gone, so you guys ain't gonna ever have to hear me call her that again, but I do apologize. I just gotta say it. Sorry, you guys. Forgive me. And forgive me for that. So she says that she is allergic to dogs, but the fact is that you have a dog and she had to grow to get used to her dog. Girl, what kind of sense does that make? If you're allergic to dogs, how the fuck do you have what? Alyssa's full of shit. Then she said she want to work on things. Girl, you want to work on things for this damn TV show. But Chris hit her with this is my decision day. I was like, amen, Chris. Chris said, this is my decision day. And Pastor Cal said, so you want a divorce? He said yes. I wanted to first. I was like, amen, amen, amen. Won't he do it? So then the Karen decides that she wants to cry. I was like, girl, please shut up. So then when he was talking about the fact that he feels like she's just on here for TV, I'm very triggered by that. I came on here because I was trying to find a husband. I was trying to find this. No, you weren't. When you saw Chris, you completely detached from the experiment, the experience. You completely detached from it. So, Alyssa, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Peace out and get the fuck away from get off of my screen. Goodbye, Alyssa. Never want to see, oh God, I just never want to see Alyssa ever again. Period, point blank. Never want to see her. But that's it, you guys. Let me know what you guys thought about Married at First Sight. Leave your comments, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, share the video. And you guys, into the next one, stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves. Wash your hands, wear a mask, socially distance, be blessed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.